Hello everyone that's going to be watching today's tutorial. So I thought I'd do a little build based on my Fl4k, which has been quite good recently. I've done some respecking, done a few changes here and there, and based on previous tutorials I've done for Borderlands, I think that I kind of got it figured out a little bit. I've taken some ideas, some tips and tricks from GBX Forums and just generally other sources of information. So first things first, let's get into the inventory and let's have a look at what we've got here. So I'm going to just quickly start off with the skill trees, and I'm just going to break it down and talk to you. So theoretically speaking, this is probably the most important tree that we can go for. Now, before we even get into this, I just want to talk about the pet that we're currently using. So we're going to go through the hunter skill tree. So the pet that we want to go for is a spider ant countess. Now, a lot of people have opted for the spider ant scorcher. I've seen that because there's the health regeneration, so that gives you a little bit of a survivability factor, and there's a little bit of elemental damage in there. Now, actually, I feel that with that in mind, damage reduction is way more important for Fl4k because the survivability isn't very good. Elemental damage is great, but it's obviously area of effect around where the spider ant is and where the spider ant's attacking. So I would say go for the spider ant countess. Not only does it give you a little bit of corrosive damage as well, which is also helpful. The damage reduction certainly comes into play. So what you want to do is you want to go ahead and you want to start stacking into this tree. We're going to go for Interplanetary Stalker. Now, the good thing about Interplanetary Stalker is it's a kill skill, and there's a lot of buffs around the kill skills for Fl4k. Every time you kill, obviously you can see it a full stack here, you get damage, pet damage, robot bonus, human bonus, you get beast bonus, so it's very, very good. That couples hand in hand with a few of his other skills, a few of Fl4k's other skills. So we'll come into that a little bit later. Next skill that we need to talk about is Leave No Trace, one of the most important skills that you could potentially use for Fl4k. Now, what you want to do with Fl4k is go for the critical hit damage, as that's where the amount of damage that you're going to be dealing comes from. This one here, adding 1 ammo to the magazine, really important for some guns, especially for high magazine assault rifles, which we'll get into in a little bit as well. So really, really important. You want to put 3 in that. We're going to talk about Hunter's Eye now. I've actually just recently started kind of using this one. Hunter's Eye is very good because of its critical hit damage against humans, its armor damage against robots, and because of its damage reduction against beasts. There's lots of situational effects there. Now, because I've got the class mod that I have, I've got 4 points in there, which is quite important. So normally I would have spec'd in the points elsewhere, but I felt it was pertinent just to have a few extra bonuses there. I would say the only other skill in this tree that you could potentially use other than Hunter's Eye is probably Grim Harvest, which we'll look at later. Head count, again, another great skill for those people that are using Fade Away. We want to get head count at 3 so that you've got the best cooldown reduction chance you possibly have for Fl4k's Fade Away. Two Fangs are absolutely brilliant skill. That's why I've got 5 in there. So with the extra projectile per shot, when your critical hit stacking, that's going to really help you out and really boost your damage up, especially with some of the skills that we'll couple onto it in a little time from some of the other trees. I'll let you know why that's important, as well with some of the weapons that I'm using. Big Game is another great one because the hunter skills become much more effective, have longer duration, so that basically just buffs Fl4k massively. So every time you have a skill that's activated, you can go through and use this hunter skill to essentially just deal more damage, and who doesn't want to do that? The Most Dangerous Game, again, is another really important one, and I think it's probably an underrated skill as well in some circumstances. I mean, we can forget the rewards cash on kill, but the fact that it's already 120 seconds for the duration, and all of those buffs there, gun damage really important, critical hit damage really important, handling really, really important for those fast-paced engagements as well. So again, this is another top tier skill. Every single tree needs to have the Most Dangerous Game. Sorry, every single build needs to have the Most Dangerous Game. So look at this, Galactic Shadow for 1 point. This is, quite a good buff. It's 15% extra critical hit damage. So again, it's worth the point. and then Grim Harvest. Now, I've only got 1 point in Grim Harvest. I did used to have 3, and I sacrificed a couple of points in some other areas for Grim Harvest. Since we've now got 57 levels, I've only got 1 point in there, and I'm looking at kind of going through and upping the crit damage where I can, but also utilising, as I mentioned earlier, Hunter's Eye. Now this is a really good skill because it does give 20% gun damage at 5 if I remember correctly, so it's worth it. With the action skill damage as well, again, it's something that's probably quite decent, but I can't imagine that it's going to make much of a difference because it isn't critical hit damage that necessarily is getting buffed here. So, I mean, give or take, I think that I've seen a definite improvement having less points in Grim Harvest and putting a few points elsewhere, and it hasn't really changed my fadeaways output. So I think that that's a good testing that I've done. And then finally, one of Fl4k's best skills, Megavore. Now this skill is fantastic because it gives you a chance to score a critical hit with weapons against any part of an enemy. Now it's essential for this. This whole build would fall apart if it wasn't for that skill. This can be coupled with a lot of really good weapons as well, and we'll come on to that in a bit. So you need to get this skill if you haven't already started using it. So this brings us on to the tree that's really going to help us out with some survivability and also going to give us the skills that we need. So I want you to go ahead and equip that fadeaway. Now fadeaway, what that does, sends you invisible, you get critical hit damage plus 200%, which is already fantastic, a little bit of health regeneration, and it's good. It is a really, really good skill. At base level, not very effective, I must admit. When I first started playing Fl4k, just for that early game survivability, I did use rack attack just so that I could kill a couple of enemies quite early doors, but as soon as I started getting some skills, moved over to fadeaway. So we're going to talk about self-repairing system first. So self-repairing system's actually a pretty decent skill. Gives you some extra health, which again ups Fl4k's survivability and gives you some health regeneration, so it's pretty good. Furious Attack, this is a really, really important kill skill, and obviously it gets better duration based on the skill that we saw previously over here, which is Big Game. So this one's boosted big time. So obviously at 2% gun damage, and obviously for handling as well, it's going to really help you in your fast-paced engagements, and when you're not using fadeaway or when you're not critting, you're just going to be dealing a lot more damage, so really important. Eager to Impress. Now this is an extremely good one because it reduces your cooldown time for your action skills. So this is going to be really, really helpful, and because it's a kill skill, it is again boosted by Big Game. So 5 points in here, absolutely necessary. I put 1 point into all my BFFs. Now the reason I did is because I had a point messing around somewhere, and I thought that it'd be important just to put a point into this tree just to help you with your pet's survivability. When your pet's staying alive, obviously you get the passive buffs from having that pet, so it's really within your best interest to keep that pet alive. Overclocked is a great skill. Now, a lot of people, I think, overlook fire rate, and fire rate just basically means more bullets per second, which it translates to higher DPS. For those of you that haven't really invested in fast guns, I would suggest start doing it, because the faster your gun, the more damage you're inevitably going to do. And when we look at some of the weapons that I'm using, you'll be churning out bullets really, really fast with this as well. Lick the Wounds is a great skill because, again, survivability, and you'll be able to get revived by your pet. So for your solo hunters out there, this is a great skill. I play solo a lot, so it helps me stay alive against the bosses and stuff, and especially if I want to play on Mayhem 4, this is a really great skill. The next one I want to look at is the Fast and the Furious, or Furious rather. This is again another gun damage buff, really, really good, because it's passive above half health, so it's just going to give you that extra bit of damage, that extra bit of movement speed, which again helps you in those engagements. With these other health regeneration buffs that we've got here, that's going to be active quite a lot, and especially when you activate fadeaway, and it gives you that extra, boost in your health. And finally, Stalker. This is a good skill because when you're at full health, you get double the effects here, so you get an extra 50% damage. That's a really good one because every time you activate your action skill, obviously, hopefully after the 15 seconds there, you're gonna get that boost. And obviously, fadeaway again is already a really good skill, so I would suggest you use your fadeaway. That gives you your buff in between fadeaway, and then obviously as this only lasts 15 seconds and fadeaway lasts probably around the same if I remember correctly. Let's have a look. I mean, 15 seconds, you're probably not going to see much of a difference in terms of it, but it gives a little boost, which is always good. So let's just quickly talk about the augments as well that we use for fadeaway. So we're going to go for Gorillas in the Mist, which again, when you use fadeaway, it does reduce your critical hit damage, but we balance that out with the rest of the skills that we've got. And obviously it doesn't end fadeaway either, so that was one of the biggest problems. You take 3 shots and then fadeaway would end. This gives you your full 15 seconds, which is fantastic, and we'll come into that in a little bit. The second one that we want to use is Unblinking Eye, and the reason is because it stacks additional successive critical hits. So when you activate fadeaway, every shot becomes a critical hit, thank you to Megavore, and you can just hit whatever you want and know that you're going to get those stacks in. So Megavore has some real synergy with fadeaway, and especially with some of all these skills that you're seeing in here. The last tree that I want you to look at is just increases your gun damage and action skill duration, so you get a little bit extra duration for more bang for your buck essentially. There are some honourable mentions in this tree that I was testing out, and whilst I still test a lot of these skills, I may come up with another tutorial as potentially this tree could be improved. I think that there's still some testing that I have to do here, and I think that just testing between Hunter's Eye and also Grim Harvest, I need to do some work on that. In this tree, what I did use previously was Go for the Eyes. It's not a great skill, but I used it to kind of get myself onto the second row, which is where I used a pretty decent skill, which is Frenzy. If you can get some points in Frenzy, any point if you can work something out here, giving you that extra damage per stack is a pretty nice buff. But again, for the extra points here, you're not going to really need either of these two skills on the front row. So let me move over and let's have a look at our weapons that we've got here. So we'll talk about the first one, which is the Soul Render. Now this comes from the new DLC, so you may not have necessarily had a chance to use this. Now, the reason Soul Render is good is because it's already very fast in terms of fire rate, and it does additional damage from the skulls that fire out. So if you had a chance to use it, in fact, let me just walk down to the firing range so you can have a better look at what these guns do. So with that in mind, the skulls will fire out when you're shooting, and that does some additional damage, so it's pretty good. I'm still testing with this, so I mean, it's pretty fast gun as it stands, and it's excellent for mobbing, and then in fadeaway, very, very consistent. So I would say it's all around a very good gun. Now, some honourable mentions that we have to say for your assault rifles. Lucian's Call is exemplary. If you want to mob effectively with a Lucian's Call, you've essentially got infinite ammo. So I would say if you go for that if you want to. And then another one was Warlord. Due to Warlord's effect of it having a chance not to consume ammo, has massive synergy with some of the Fl4k's skills as well. So we'll move on to weapon number 2, which is the Fl4k. Now I think Fl4k gets overlooked a hell of a lot. Now if you cast your mind back to Borderlands 2, the Fl4k didn't really have much of a handle. It was very, very random. At least in this, I feel there's a difference where you can kind of control the chaos a little bit. You can judge it a little bit better. I think the bullets are a little bit tighter, so it genuinely works. Now, one thing that makes the Fl4k powerful in Fl4k's hands is the fact that you can use Megavore and you can crit with the Fl4k. Now, for argument's sake, when we use Fl4k, you've constantly got to get it in the right area to do as much damage as possible, and that can be quite tricky for people, which is why I would use Fl4k on really big bosses. Using it against a boss like Captain Tron or someone like that, you could essentially one hit with fadeaway. Again, it does a lot of good damage, and especially with that crit, you're going to be absolutely slaying mobs. So again, great weapon. Now, another shotgun that I have been kind of testing that we're going through at the minute would have been the Brainstormer. I think it's a bit slow, but it does certainly do a lot of damage. If you have a Brainstormer, I would recommend trying that one out. But the Fl4k is my absolute go-to, and it just controls scenarios. So it's a very, very good gun if you want to get through and use it in high mob intensity areas. Now, third weapon I want to talk about is the long musket. Now, this might be a bit of a random one, but the good thing about the long musket is that it has insanely high DPS with its effect. So it's a incendiary effect. It deals so much damage, and especially with some of the buffs that we've got with Flak against humans, it tears through any human enemy that you come up against. So I suggest using this one. And one of my other favourite SMGs that I do use, I think I've got one over here somewhere. No, must have put it in the bank, is the bitch. So I'd recommend using a bitch because of its additional critical hit damage. It's a very, very good SMG. Long musket, bitch, and I'd also to a certain extent say that the jackhammer, the handsome jackhammer, is a very good SMG to use with Flak as well. We get onto the fourth weapon, which is by far one of my favourite weapons across the whole Borderlands franchise. I loved the loader in Borderlands 2, it was a fantastic weapon, and put in the hands of Flak, this weapon is a complete and utter machine killer. Now, for those of you that haven't used one before, what it does is it splits off into 3 bullets, and each bullet obviously has the opportunity to crit. With that crit and the additional crit damage that you do get out of a Lyuda, you're going to deal some insane damage. Let me just cast your mind back to one of the skills that we are using here, which is Two Fang. When you use a Lyuda and Two Fang procs, you're going to have 6 bullets. Now you may have seen, I do have a couple of videos floating around where I've done it, and with those bullets in mind, you're going to be hitting for 6 criticals if you use Fade Away. That's an insane amount of damage, and quite frankly, anybody that uses a Lyuda against a big boss, you could go up against a Grave Ward or someone like that, and you would be dealing insane damage with a Lyuda. The problem with the Lyuda, the only drawback, is that you will churn through the ammo. You know, it has got a magazine size of 22. If you go for an elemental Lyuda, it's going to have significant less magazine size. This is probably one of the best ones that I found in the game so far. As the magazine size, it's almost on par with an assault rifle, and the fact that it only consumes 1 bullet when it can potentially put out 6 is just really, really good trade-off. There is no other sniper rifle in this game that I would use. This gun is the perfect weapon for Flak. Absolutely recommend it. Go get yourself one, and to make things easier, do the Target of Opportunity crew challenge that you can find in Sanctuary. I'll run down there real quick just in case you don't know where it is. I may have already forgotten where it is. Hang on. Here we go. So it's just around the corner here. Say hello to your friend Zero, and you want to just kill all of these targets here. Now, those of you that love the exploration, you can go out and find these guys. If you want to do it quickly, just go on Google and it'll tell you everything. So kill all these, come see Zero, he'll give you a Lyuda. Fantastic weapon, and to be fair, it's not too difficult to get hold of. So we'll move on to some of the gear that we use. Now, the Transformer may be a shocking choice of shield, and frankly, it's one of them ones that I found that I didn't really think would get me through a lot, but it actually does. The fact it gives 100% shock resistance is great. Flak's got low survivability as it is in comparison to some of the other Vault Hunters, so the fact that shock damage doesn't affect Flak with this shield really gives you an advantage against some of those enemies. Of course it's situational, but it's very good. The fact that one of the best things as well about this is the fact that it converts 40% of bullets, 40% chance to absorb bullets into your ammo count. So when you're firing with your Soul Render or whatever gun that you want, that's going to give you a lot of ammo back as well as you're getting shot. So when you're mobbing against, you've got a huge mob of people with weapons, that's going to give you that ammo back, and trust me, you're going to churn through ammo with some of the fire rates that you're putting out here. And this is one of the new class mods that have been added, the stack bot. Now, with this class mod, it's only realistically for what it offers you that I can recommend that you use it. And that is whenever you score a critical hit, whenever Flak scores a critical hit, they gain increased weapon damage until they don't score a critical hit. It's a brilliant class mod, and upon equipping it, going up against a few bosses, I've tested it. It boosts your DPS massively, especially when you use Fade Away. And a good weapon with synergy if you're worried about the ammo. Get a Lucian's Call, and you can just tear through a boss, and it will stack so much damage against them. The other thing that you need to remember here as well is that this gives you action skill cooldown, health regeneration, and shield recharge rate. The points that it gives you in the class mod, of course, they're good, but that's not what I've got it, and frankly, I don't care really much for those points in the class mod. I'm sure I'll find one down the line that might offer something better, but the other skills that this offers is fantastic, and I would say that it's definitely worth using. Go get yourself one. We'll talk about grenades. Now, I don't actually find myself using grenades very often with Flak. I can't recommend any grenades. I mean, they nerfed quite a lot of the good ones. My favourite grenade to use was the Firestorm, and it was a fantastic grenade. At the minute, I'm using this Widowmaker just to give me some extra shock damage. It's not the best grenade, but it does the trick for if I want to strip some shields. So I'm on the lookout for a new one. If anyone has some recommendations, please send it my way. But again, grenades not really important for this build. There's not a great deal of stuff that you can do with it. Finally, now this is a really good item, the Pearl of Ineffable Knowledge. You get it from the latest DLC, the Hammerlock and Wainwright's Wedding, Guns, Love and Tentacles thingamajigger, and this gives you obviously stack damage for consecutive successful hits, granting that 1% increased damage up to 15 times, and I just think that with the amount of damage that you're going to be stacking there, that's going to help you out with your DPS, and it's just going to help you mob a lot more as well. The max health part, that obviously adds a bit of survivability for Flak. The weapon reload speed, really good for increasing your DPS. So, I guess that kind of concludes everything that we want to talk about today, and I think that I might have given you some ideas of what to use for your build. If I have, please leave a comment on this video. Please let me know if there's anything you feel actually could improve this build.